Michael Chen stood in his garage at 2 a.m. holding a leather journal he had never seen before. His hands were shaking. The last entry was dated 3 days before his wife Sarah died. It started with 5 words that would change everything. If you're reading this, Michael, he wasn't prepared for what came next. Let me take you back 6 weeks. Michael had been a widower for 14 months. His wife Sarah had passed away from a sudden brain aneurysm at 34 years old, no warning, no goodbye. One moment, she was laughing at their daughter Emma's joke about penguins, and 48 hours later, she was gone. That's how fast life can shift beneath your feet. Emma had just turned 7. She had Sarah's dark, curly hair and that same way of tilting her head when she was thinking hard about something. Michael watched her navigate grief in waves. Some days she'd be completely fine, building elaborate Lego cities and explaining their complex governance to him. Other days she'd crawl into his lap and whisper, "I miss Mummy's smell." Those were the days that broke him into smaller and smaller pieces, but he couldn't fall apart. Emma needed at least one parent who could still function, still make breakfast, still remember to sign permission slips and buy the right color folders for school. So Michael did what millions of grieving parents do, functioned. He survived, put one foot in front of the other. The house still looked mostly the same. Michael hadn't been able to change much. Sarah's gardening books were still stacked by the back door. Her favorite mug, the one with the chipped handle that said, "But first," coffee still sat in the cupboard. He couldn't use it, couldn't donate it, couldn't even move it to a different shelf. Sometimes grief makes hoarders of us all, doesn't it? We cling to objects because they're solid and real in ways that memories aren't. He had started the difficult work of going through Sarah's things about 6 weeks after this particular night I'm telling you about. Not her clothes. He wasn't ready for that. But her office. Sarah had been a primary school teacher, and she'd kept a small office space in their spare room. Stacks of children's books, lesson plans going back years, cards from students and their parents. Michael had been sorting through boxes of teaching materials when he found it. Storage container pushed far back on the top shelf of her closet. Not hidden exactly, but not in plain sight either. Inside were things he recognized. Sarah's degree certificates. Their wedding photos, the professional ones they'd never gotten around to framing. Emma's hospital baby hat, impossibly tiny. And at the bottom, wrapped in one of Sarah's scarves, a brown leather journal. He sat down right there on the office floor and opened it. Sarah's handwriting looked back at him, and for a moment he couldn't breathe. It was so distinctly hers. The way she made her capital letters slightly too large, the little hearts she drew instead of dots over her eyes when she was in a good mood. The journal wasn't a diary in the traditional sense. The entries weren't daily or even regular. The first one was dated 7 years ago, right after they'd found out Sarah was pregnant. Now, before I continue with what Michael found, I need you to think about something. How many of us have words we've left unsaid, messages we keep meaning to send? I want you to keep that question in your mind as this story unfolds, because what Sarah left behind wasn't just for her husband. Stay with me, because what happens next reveals something about love that most people never get to see. Michael started reading from the beginning. The early entries were joyful, full of excitement about becoming parents. Sarah wrote about her fears too. What if she wasn't good at it? What if she couldn't balance teaching other people's children with raising her own? There were entries about Emma's birth, about those exhausting first months, about the overwhelming love she felt watching Michael become a father. He recognized some of the moments she'd written about. Their first Christmas as a family of 3, Emma's first steps. The day Emma started reception class and Sarah cried in the car park afterwards. But there were also private thoughts he'd never known. Times Sarah had felt overwhelmed or inadequate. Moments she'd doubted herself. It was strange and intimate, reading his wife's inner life like this. The entries were scattered across years. Sometimes there'd be 3 in 1 month, then nothing for 6 months. They seemed to happen when Sarah was processing something important, when her father had his heart attack 3 years ago. There were several entries about mortality and time and making sure the people you love know it. Then Michael reached the entries from 2 years ago. Sarah had started writing more frequently. The tone had shifted slightly, though he couldn't quite identify how at first. She wrote about wanting to make sure Emma knew certain things. Family stories, where Sarah's grandmother's ring had come from, the recipe for the special birthday pancakes Sarah made for Emma every year, the one passed down from Sarah's own mother. Michael's chest felt tight. Has Sarah known something? Had there been signs? But no, he'd been over this 1,000 times with doctors. Brain aneurysms like hers rarely gave warnings. This wasn't a premonition. This was something else. This was a woman who'd lost her own mother young and understood that tomorrow isn't guaranteed. The later entries included letters to Emma at different ages, for Emma when she's 10, for Emma when she starts secondary school, for Emma when she has her first heartbreak. For Emma on her wedding day, Sarah had been building a collection of mother-daughter moments she might not be there for. Michael had to stop reading. Grief hit fresh and sharp, like it had just happened yesterday. Sarah had done this alone. She'd carried this awareness, this preparation, and she'd never mentioned it to him. Had she thought he wouldn't understand? Or had she been protecting him from having to think about a future where she might not be there? Michael couldn't read it all in one sitting. Over the next several days, he'd pick up the journal during lunch breaks at work or late at night when Emma was asleep. Each entry felt like finding a new piece of Sarah he'd thought was lost forever. Her voice was so clear in the writing. He could hear her inflection, her laugh. There were practical entries, too. Sarah had written down things she thought Emma should know. How to handle difficult friendships. What to do when you're anxious. Why it's important to be kind, even when it's hard. Some of it made Michael smile. Sarah had strong opinions about everything, from the correct way to make tea to why reading books was better than watching their adaptations. She'd written about their marriage, too. Private observations about their relationship. How they'd worked through difficult patches. What she loved about Michael. Things he'd never known she noticed. The way he always checked that doors were locked before bed. How he listened to Emma's long, meandering stories about school without interrupting. How he'd learned to braid hair from YouTube videos when Emma decided she wanted plaits like her friend Olivia. Reading these entries felt voyeuristic and precious at the same time. Sarah hadn't written them for him exactly, but she hadn't hidden them either. She'd left them somewhere he'd eventually find them, and that felt intentional. Then he reached the final section. The last few entries were different. They were dated from the last month of Sarah's life, though of course she hadn't known it would be her last month. The tone had changed again. More urgent somehow, more specific. 3 weeks before she died, Sarah had written about a conversation she'd had with Emma. Emma had asked if Sarah would always be there, not in an anxious way, just with the casual curiosity that 7-year-olds have about everything. Sarah had told her yes, of course. Mummy wasn't going anywhere. But the question had clearly stayed with Sarah, bothered her. She wrote, "I told Emma I'd always be there, and I meant it. But I've been thinking about what it always means. My mom died when I was 15. I thought she'd always be there too. I'm not trying to be morbid. I just keep thinking, what if I'm not? What if something happens and I never get to tell Emma all the things a mother should tell her daughter? What if she grows up with questions I'm not there to answer?" The entry continued. Sarah had decided to write more letters, specific ones. But also, she wanted to make sure Michael understood things. How to help Emma through her period when the time came. What Sarah's own adolescence had been like so Michael might better understand Emma's. The importance of letting Emma make her own choices while also keeping her safe. "Michael is such a wonderful father," Sarah had written. "But there are things about being a girl in this world that he won't instinctively know. Not because he's not capable, but because he hasn't lived it. I want to leave breadcrumbs for him. There's ways to help our daughter navigate everything. I wish I could be there to guide her through myself." Michael had to set the journal down. He walked to Emma's room and watched her sleep for a long time. She was curled around her stuffed elephant, completely peaceful, thought about all the years ahead. All the moments Sarah had tried to prepare for. He felt the weight of solo parenting in a new way. Not just the logistics, but the responsibility of being enough. Of somehow being both parents. The second to last entry was dated 5 days before Sarah's death. She'd been planning Emma's 8th birthday party, which was still months away. She wrote about wanting to make it special, about the treasure hunt she was going to organize. Then the entry shifted. "I've been having headaches the last few days. It's probably just stress from work. End of term is always chaotic. But it made me think about this journal, about whether Michael knows it exists. I should tell him. I should sit him down and explain that if anything ever happens to me, there's a box in my office closet with things for Emma, letters for her future, our family stories, instructions for the birthday pancakes, and that terrible Christmas pudding recipe his mother insists on, even though nobody actually likes it. Sarah had added a line that made Michael's throat close up. But I won't tell him yet. If I mention it, he'll worry. He'll think something's wrong, and nothing's wrong. I'm fine. We're all fine. I just like being prepared. I'll tell him eventually. Maybe on our next anniversary. I'll make it sweet somehow, not morbid. I'll find the right way to say, I've loved you and Emma so much that I've tried to leave pieces of that love everywhere, just in case. But there hadn't been a next anniversary. 5 days after that entry, Sarah had collapsed at school. 48 hours later, she was gone. She'd never had the chance to tell Michael about the journal. The final entry was short. It was dated 3 days before her death. Sarah had written it quickly, the handwriting slightly messier than usual. Quick note because I'm running late for work. Emma said something this morning that gutted me in the best way. She said, "Mummy, when I grow up, I want to be just like you." And I thought, what an incredible responsibility. What an honor. I don't know if I'm doing any of this right. Parenting, marriage, life, but I'm trying. God, I'm trying so hard. If you're reading this, my darling Emma, years from now, I hope you know that every single day of your life, you have been my greatest joy. You and your father are my whole heart. The entry ended there. 3 days later, Sarah was gone. Michael didn't tell anyone about the journal at first. Not his sister, not his close friends, not even his therapist. It felt too private, too raw. For about a week, he just carried the knowledge of it around like a stone in his pocket. Sarah had left all of this behind. Instructions, love letters, pieces of herself for Emma's future. The question that kept circling his mind was, when should Emma see this? Sarah had written letters for specific ages and milestones. Some were clearly meant for teenage Emma or adult Emma, but there were things in the journal that 7-year-old Emma could understand now. Should he wait? Should he share pieces of it gradually? He found himself reading the journal every night. Sometimes the same entries over and over. There was comfort in Sarah's voice, even written down. It was the closest he could get to talking with her again. He'd read an entry and then mentally respond to her, having one-sided conversations in his head. You were wrong about one thing, he'd think at the page. You were doing it right. You were doing everything right. The grief counselor he'd been seeing had told him that grief comes in waves, not stages. That you don't move through it in a linear way. You think you're fine, and then something small, a smell or a song or the way light hits a room, and you're drowning again. The journal brought both comfort and fresh pain. Every entry was Sarah, alive again on the page. Every entry ended, and she was gone again. Michael started noticing things Sarah had written about. She'd mentioned that Emma might struggle with maths around age 8 or 9 because Sarah had struggled too. She'd written about her own anxiety as a child and signs to watch for in Emma. She'd documented family medical history in detail, her mother's heart condition, her father's diabetes, information Emma might need someday. There were smaller things too. Sarah had written down the story of how she and Michael met in detail. So Emma knows her origin story. She'd included the embarrassing bits, like how Sarah had accidentally spilled coffee all over Michael at a bookshop, and then argued with him about whether Bronte or Austin was better. Michael had said Austin. Sarah had called him pedestrian. Somehow they'd ended up talking for 3 hours. I want Emma to know that love isn't always lightning and fireworks, Sarah had written. Sometimes it's coffee stains and literary debates. Sometimes it's someone choosing to stay through the boring parts and the hard parts. Your father stayed. Through my mother's death, through my dark years of depression after, through every version of me. That's the kind of love I want you to find, Emma. Staying kind. Michael cried reading that, 'cause Sarah hadn't gotten to stay. Not by choice, but still. She'd been taken from them, and all her good intentions, all her careful preparation, couldn't change that absence. But here's what started to shift for Michael. He began to see the journal not as Sarah's goodbye, but as her way of staying. She couldn't be there physically, but she'd found a way to still guide Emma, to still share her wisdom and love and stories. It wasn't the same as having her there. Nothing could be. But it was something. 2 weeks after finding the journal, Michael made a decision. He would tell Emma about it, but carefully. He'd start with one letter. Sarah had written for Emma at age 7. Let Emma hear her mother's voice. See her handwriting. Know that even though Sarah wasn't here, she was still thinking about her, still loving her. He chose a Saturday morning. Emma was eating cereal at the kitchen table, still in her pajamas, her hair an impressive tangle. Michael sat down across from her with the journal and a single letter he'd carefully removed. "Emma, sweetheart, I found something of Mummy's, something special she left for you." Emma looked up, milk dribbling down her chin. "What is it?" "It's a letter, Mummy. Wrote it for you before she died. She didn't know she was going to die soon, but she wrote you some letters anyway, for different times in your life. This one is for right now, for when you're 7. Emma set down her spoon. Her eyes went very wide and serious. "Mummy wrote me a letter." "She did. Do you want to read it? We can read it together if you want." Emma nodded. She wiped her hands on her pajamas and held them out. Michael gave her the letter. It was written on Sarah's favorite stationery, the kind with small wildflowers around the border. Emma couldn't read all the words yet. Her reading was good, but Sarah's handwriting was curly, and some of the words were big, so Michael helped. The letter started simply, "My darling Emma, you are 7 years old now. What an excellent age to be. Do you remember when you were 6 and you told me that 7 was going to be your best year yet? I hope you're right. I hope every year gets better and better." Sarah had written about some of her favorite memories with Emma. The time they'd made a fort out of every blanket in the house. The day they'd spent an entire afternoon making biscuits and ended up covered in flour. The evening Emma had insisted on teaching Sarah how to do a cartwheel, even though Sarah was terrible at them. "I want you to know something important," the letter continued, and Michael's voice caught as he read it. "You are so loved. By me, by Daddy, by everyone who knows you. You make the world brighter just by being in it. Sometimes you might feel sad or scared or angry. Those feelings are all okay. Let yourself feel them. Talk to Daddy about them. He's very good at listening." Emma listened intently as Michael read. When he finished, she was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Can I keep it? In my room? Of course, it's yours. Are there more?" Michael nodded. "There are. Mummy wrote you letters for when you're older too, for different times in your life. Can I read them all now?" This was the hard part. Some of them are for when you're bigger. Mummy wrote them for older Emma, but we can read them when you get to those ages. So it'll be like getting letters from Mummy as you grow up. Emma thought about this. She traced the flowers on the border of the letter with one finger. "That's nice," she finally said. "It's like Mummy knew she might not be here, so she left pieces of herself behind." The clarity of her understanding startled Michael. Children see things so directly sometimes. No complicated adult layers of denial or bargaining. Just the simple truth. Sarah had left pieces of herself behind. "Exactly," Michael said. "That's exactly what she did." Over the following weeks, Michael and Emma developed a routine around the journal. Once a week, usually on Sunday mornings, they'd sit together and Michael would share something from it. Not the letters meant for older Emma. He held those in trust for the future. But other things. Stories about Sarah's childhood, entries about Emma as a baby, funny observations about family life. Emma's favorite was an entry where Sarah had written about the time 2-year-old. Emma had decided to paint the bathroom with an entire tube of toothpaste. Sarah had written, "I was so frustrated in the moment, but Michael started laughing, and then I started laughing, and Emma was so proud of her minty artwork. We took photos before we cleaned it up. Parenthood is knowing when to preserve the chaos before fixing it." "I don't remember that," Emma said, giggling. "You were very little. We do have the photos somewhere." These Sunday morning sessions became precious to both of them. It was a way to keep Sarah present in their daily lives. Emma would sometimes ask questions. What was Granny like? Why did Mummy become a teacher? Did Mummy like ice cream? Michael would answer what he could, and sometimes Sarah's journal entries filled in the rest. Michael also started following some of Sarah's guidance. There was an entry about the importance of letting Emma try things and fail safely. Michael wants to protect her from every hurt, Sarah had written, and I love that about him. But Emma needs to learn that falling down isn't the end of the world. She needs small hurts now, so bigger hurts later don't break her. So when Emma wanted to try riding her bike without training wheels, Michael's instinct was to say, "Not yet. Wait until you're older. Let me run alongside you." But he thought about Sarah's words, and instead he said, "Okay, let's try. I'll be right here." Emma fell twice, scraped her knee once, and by the end of the afternoon she was wobbling down the street independently, shouting, "I'm doing it." Michael took a photo, and that night he whispered to Sarah's picture, "You were right. He also shared the journal's existence with his close circle. His sister Kate was the first person he told. They were having coffee while Emma was at a friend's house. He brought the journal with him and showed her. Kate cried, reading just a few entries. "This is so Sarah," she said. "Planning for everything. She's trying to take care of you both even after she's gone. Have you shown Mom and Dad?" Michael's parents had been devastated by Sarah's death. She'd been like a daughter to them. He brought the journal over for Sunday dinner the next week and shared a few entries. His mother held the journal like it was made of glass. She was such a special person, his mom said. Emma is so lucky to have this, to have her mother's words. His father, a man who rarely showed emotion, had to leave the room for a moment. When he came back, his eyes were red, but he was smiling.
Oh.
That's a legacy, isn't it? Sarah's still here, still teaching, still loving. That's what we all hope for, to matter enough that we're not forgotten. Michael also brought up the journal in therapy. His counselor asked good questions. How did finding it make him feel? Is it helping his grief or complicating it?
Michael
Thought about it. Both, he said honestly. It's hard reading her thoughts and knowing I can't respond. Knowing she had all these plans for the future that won't happen the way she imagined. But it's also like having her back in small ways. Her advice is still so good. She knew Emma so well. She knew me so well. Are you worried about anything regarding the journal? His therapist asked. I worry about getting it wrong, about showing Emma too much too soon or waiting too long. Sarah wrote some of these letters for specific ages. What if I give Emma the letter for her 13th birthday when she's 12 or 14? What if my timing is off and it doesn't land the way Sarah hoped? His therapist smiled gently. Michael, Sarah trusted you with this. She left the journal where you'd find it. She didn't leave detailed instructions about exactly when to share what, because she trusted your judgment as Emma's father. You won't get it wrong because there's no wrong way to love your daughter. That perspective helped. Sarah had trusted him. She'd prepared what she could, and then she'd trusted him to handle the rest. That trust was its own kind of love letter. 6 months after finding the journal, Michael's life had developed a different rhythm. The sharp grief had softened into something more constant but less overwhelming. He still missed Sarah every day, still saw things he wanted to tell her, still reached for his phone sometimes before remembering she wouldn't answer. But the journal had given him a strange gift. It had given him continued access to Sarah's perspective. When he was unsure about something with Emma, he could sometimes find Sarah's thoughts on it in the journal. It wasn't the same as asking her directly, but it helped. Emma had grown comfortable with the journal too. She knew it existed, knew there were letters waiting for her future self. Sometimes she'd ask, "Do you think Mummy wrote anything about this?" When something happened. Usually Michael didn't know, but they'd look together. More often than not, Sarah had indeed written something relevant. When Emma struggled with a friendship issue at school, there was an entry about Sarah's own difficult friendship at that age. When Emma became obsessed with space and wanted to be an astronaut, there was an entry about encouraging Emma's interests, whatever they might be. Let her dream big, Sarah had written. Let her want impossible things. Time will teach her what's practical. Childhood should be for wanting the moon. Michael had started adding to the journal himself. Not in Sarah's section. He couldn't bring himself to write on those pages. But he'd bought an identical journal and started his own entries. Letters for Emma, documentation of their life after Sarah. He wrote about Emma's small triumphs and her challenges. He wrote about his own struggles and joys. If Sarah could leave pieces of herself behind, he explained to Kate, then maybe I can too. Maybe Emma will want to know someday what these years were like, how we managed, what I was thinking. He wrote an entry after Emma's school play, where she played a tree and took her role very seriously, standing perfectly still for 12 minutes. He wrote about the first time Emma said she couldn't quite remember what Sarah's voice sounded like, and they'd spent an evening watching old videos. He wrote about his own loneliness sometimes, and his gratitude and his hope for the future. The upcoming milestone was Emma's 8th birthday. Sarah had written extensively about the treasure hunt she'd wanted to plan. Michael had found those entries months ago and had been quietly preparing. Sarah had sketched out clues and hiding places. She'd written what the prize should be at the end, a charm bracelet with their family birthstones. Michael followed Sarah's plan exactly. He hid clues around the house and garden, bought the bracelet Sarah had described. On Emma's birthday morning, he gave her the first clue and explained that Mummy had planned this treasure hunt before she died. Emma's face lit up. Really? Mummy made this for me? She did. Are you ready to hunt for treasure? Emma found each clue, getting more excited with each discovery. The final clue led to the garden shed where Michael had hidden the small wrapped box. Inside was the bracelet and a note from Sarah, one Michael had found tucked in the journal. Happy 8th birthday, my darling girl. I hope your treasure hunt was fun. This bracelet has charms for our whole family. The purple stone is for you, February. The green is for Daddy, May. The blue is for me, September. For it and No we're always together, the three of us. I love you more than all the stars, Mummy. Emma put the bracelet on immediately. She wore it every day after that. Sometimes Michael would catch her touching it absently, running her fingers over the charms, physical reminder that she was loved. That night after Emma was asleep, Michael sat in the garden with both journals, his and Sarah's. He wrote a new entry on his own. Today, Emma turned 8. We did the treasure hunt you planned. She loved it. She loved knowing you made it for her. Sometimes I wonder if I'm doing this right, raising her without you. But then I see her, so brave and kind and funny, and I think we must be doing something right. You're still here, Sarah, in her laugh, in the journals. In every choice I make because I'm trying to honor what you would have wanted. I hope wherever you are you know that. I hope you know we're okay. Sad sometimes, but okay. Emma knows she's loved. She knows you loved her. That's the greatest gift you left behind. The journals became family heirlooms. Michael knew that someday, when Emma was grown, she'd read every word. She'd see her mother's hopes and fears and love. She'd see Michael's entries too, his efforts to be both parents, his own love letters to her childhood. Other people who'd lost loved ones started asking Michael about the journal after he mentioned it in a grief support group. Has finding it helped? Would he recommend looking for similar items? Michael always said the same thing. The journal hadn't fixed his grief. Nothing could do that. But it had given him a roadmap through it. It had let Sarah continue to be present in their lives in a tangible way. Some people in the group started creating their own journals, writing letters to their children or partners, documenting things they wanted remembered. It became a way of taking control of legacy. Michael thought Sarah would have liked that. She'd always been a teacher, always wanted to help people. Even in death, her choice to leave the journal behind was teaching others about love and preparation and the importance of saying things while you can. Now I want to hear from you. If you could leave one letter behind for someone you love, what would it say? Not the whole letter, but what's the one thing you'd want them to know? Share in the comments below. And if this story touched you, if you've experienced loss or found unexpected treasures left behind by loved ones, I'd love to hear your story too. Sometimes sharing these experiences helps us all feel a little less alone in our grief. Sarah's journal didn't bring her back. It didn't erase the pain of loss. But it gave Michael and Emma something precious. Proof that love doesn't end when life does. That the people who love us leave fingerprints on our souls. That legacy isn't just what we accomplish. It's what we leave in the hearts of the people who remain.